Okay, we're moving right along in this course. I appreciate the assignments that you have been submitting. This is chapter 10. It's on intelligence. This is kind of an interesting chapter because one of the questions we can ask is, what is intelligence? Have you ever seen intelligence? Have you ever held intelligence? Uh, we have ways supposedly that we can measure intelligence. At one time, Alfred Binet, by one time I mean I think this was around 1905, Alfred Binet measured intelligence to find out how smart people were not. In other words, he wasn't finding out how smart they were, he was finding out how smart they were not. And if they weren't smart enough, if they weren't intelligent enough, and does intelligence and smart mean the same thing? That's just the question. Because we hear remarks as he is so smart, she made a smart move. So basically, what does that mean? Well, anyway, Stephen Binet wanted to measure individuals to see how smart they were not, to see if they need any special assistance. So what is intelligence? Is it a number? We have an average IQ, and IQ means the same as intelligence. We have an average IQ of 100. So now, is intelligence a number? Or does it really tell us how adaptable an individual is for a particular culture? Now, I believe that we certainly have ways of measuring individuals, to look at an individual and to tell how intelligent they are from just looking at them. That's kind of difficult to do. But nonetheless, I remember one individual visiting with, and this individual piped up and says, "Hey, I have an IQ of 137. So, what does that mean? Does that mean that they know a lot more than other individuals? That they are smarter than other individuals? Or does it mean that they have met the standards that culture has set for them?" These are just some of the questions, folks. Now, I realize that we have to run assessments, categorize individuals as part of our culture. And I like our culture. So, if you have an IQ of 100, you have average intelligence. If you have an IQ of 130, you have way above average intelligence. And then if the individual is very creative, they may not have what we consider a high intelligence quotient or high IQ, and yet they are very creative. Well, some individuals would look at them and say, oh, since they're creative and they're able to go ahead and develop these different concepts and so forth, they must be intelligent. Charles Spearman stated, before we get to Charles Spearman, we have an IQ of 75 or below, individuals that may not score quite as high on IQ or intelligence tests. And it goes from mildly retarded to severely retarded to profound, and profound is an IQ of 20 or less. Charles Spearman talked about intelligence, and he said we kind of have an overall intelligence, but then with this intelligence, people have special abilities. So what we're going to call that is G, just the letter G. Another individual, Satoshi Kanazawa, and I may have butchered that, I don't know. He said that if we can solve special problems, that will determine our IQ. Howard Gardner, he mentioned 8 intelligence, and he may have added one more to it. Interpersonal intelligence, intrapersonal intelligence, spatial intelligence, reading intelligence, music intelligence. Anything that we excel at means that we have a high intelligence. Now, the Rain Man, I don't know whether you saw that movie of the Rain Man. It was kind of interesting because he was a savant. He had what they call the savant syndrome. He learned 9,000 books. He was very concrete. When they were in a cafe one time, he literally took things as they were told to him. But he was in a cafe with his father, and his father told him to lower your voice. So what did he do? He slid down. He slid way down. He was going to lower his voice, not realizing that it was probably the pitch of his voice that the father was talking about. He thought there was a physical description of it. Well, he learned 9,000 books. And evidently he could recite pages and verses from these books. Now, Abraham Lincoln, President Abraham Lincoln, gave a Gettysburg Address, and someone asked Rain Man, it may have been his father, if he knew Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. Yeah, it's on 1805, this certain street. In other words, gave him a street address instead of the actual presentation that President Abraham Lincoln did give. Now, an individual by the name of Robert Sternberg said we have 3 intelligences. We have an analytical intelligence, and this possibly being able to work with equations and being able to work with math. He said that was an intelligence. Then he stated that we have a creative intelligence, and that's being able to come up with something new and unusual. And then we have a practical intelligence. Now, I know individuals with all 3, or at least one of the 3, and you probably do too. Now, on top of all these different types of intelligence, we come up with an emotional intelligence that was studied and reported on by an individual by the name of Daniel Goleman. And he said that we have an emotion intelligence. And this is kind of interesting, too, because our emotions can go ahead and determine our intelligence. And it goes a little bit further than that, because Goleman really focused in on the brain when he was talking about intelligence. And it was interesting talking about individuals who are sociopaths or psychopaths, and this was the type of emotional intelligence that was being discussed. He said that basically the material goes into the right hemisphere that is negative, and in sociopaths, this negative material stays longer in the right hemisphere before it is transferred to the left hemisphere. So evidently what he was saying was that all of us, when we receive negative information, rape, kill, murder, steal, but when we receive negative information, it goes into our right hemisphere, and the difference between a sociopath and an individual considered somewhat normal, the sociopath would have the material boiling up in their right hemisphere longer before it was transferred over to the left hemisphere. So that was part of the intelligence that he wrote about. I think it's a fascinating subject. It's a subject we don't know a whole lot about. It is a subject that pretty much guides our culture. And we could go into other cultures too, and we could find different intelligence. As a matter of fact, if we were in the rainforest, it would probably be interesting to have an individual there who was good with a blowgun. You know, we have a long shaft, and you put a dart in it, and you blow this dart, and there's a little poison on the tip. And so if a person was good with a dart, would that be practical intelligence? probably, but it would be good to know a person like that. And it probably wouldn't be as well to know someone down in the rainforest, if you were talking about survival, who would be able to recite the equations, algorithm. It probably wouldn't do a whole lot of good, but survival would be very important down there. So we have an interesting topic. Not really quite sure what it is, and we're not going to settle it here. Maybe you have your own ideas and your own thoughts on it. That is great. But for the time being, we'll leave intelligence up to very intelligent people. Until we see you on the next video, you have a good day and keep up the good work.